Something had awoken Amanda. She heard hushed chatter and a set of rushed footsteps. "What are you two doing?" she groggily asks. As her two friends' chatter had now subsided, she can now hear what had caused her friends to exit their tents. There's something in the woods. Carl, Amanda and Sean loved hiking through the woods that trailed off from their Oregon backyards. On a bi-monthly basis, it was commonplace for the three to pack up their camping equipment and take an overnight stroll through the woods. The walk up the mountain was easy and familiar. All three were well versed in the mountainous wooded regions around their home, and the fresh air made them rage with excitement for their ritualistic hobby. 3 miles into the brush, they found a nice spot and began unpacking and collecting wood for a fire. With the day already being mostly long behind them, and the sun approaching its final red hue, the three buckled in for a relaxing evening filled with booze and stories. The group paused mid-word, putting down their drinks. "What was that?" Carl said. They had all heard it. "I don't know," said Amanda. "I have never heard anything like it before." Sean, without saying a word, got to his feet and walked straight into the woods. He was by far the most confident of the three, and his willingness to confront danger or take unnecessary risks head-on was documented well by his two friends. They waited patiently for his return. The minutes trickled on, and the two remaining in camp had almost forgotten the sound that had so recently disturbed them. They assumed that when Sean would eventually return, he would have some crazy story about a bear or a pack of wolves he had found evidence of nearby. Sean disappearing into the trees was no new phenomenon. He would regularly spend many days alone in the woods, and nothing up here brought him to fear. The two friends did not worry, but in the back of their minds they hoped for the soft sign of footprints approaching, signaling his return to ring out soon. After 15 minutes, Sean had finally returned. His return, however, was awkward, and he quickly sat down and returned to his drink. The obvious question was left unasked. But Sean, after composing himself, with his two friends eagerly gazing directly at him, tilted his head to one side and explained where he had been for the last 15 minutes. He explained that as he had walked around the near vicinity, he hadn't seen anything out of the ordinary. However, around 400 meters further off trail, he came across another group of campers not dissimilar from them. They too had heard the noise, but they were visibly shaken. They described it in far more detail and volume than Sean had recalled. This second group consisted of a wildlife expert and a former park ranger, and both explained they had never heard a sound like it before. It sounded unnatural, almost mocking, as if mimicking what it thought a beast from this world would sound like. After a short conversation, and feeling, if anything, unnerved, Sean wished the group a good night and left. Confidence had slowly been rebuilt, and now laughter and chatter had re-emerged. The three watched as the sun had now set and darkness had now enveloped their sight, with their campfire the only saviour to the shadows. Carl, had been loudly babbling on about the last time they were out there, when Sean had forgotten to pack a spare pair of clothes after he had fallen into the nearby lake. The friends laughed and reminisced as they remembered Sean sitting on a log freezing with no change of clothes to protect him. The whole group could barely control their sniggers, thinking back on their best times spent here in the woods. This place was special to them, and the feelings it gave were unmatched. But a lull in the conversation gave way for the quiet sounds of nature to fill the air once again. This was far closer than before. A mild struggle could be heard, and then silence. All three stared off in the direction of the noise, the same direction Sean had previously returned from. "What was that?" Carl asked again. "I don't know," Sean replied. "Maybe the other group were messing with us," said Amanda. "Maybe," Sean replied. Waiting patiently on edge and hearing nothing more, the three decided to put out their fire and just call it a night. And they were in no mood to have another group mess with them this far from civilization. There were a few words exchanged, but as the three sat in their individual tents and time slowly dragged on, one by one they drifted off into slumber. Something had awoken Amanda, and as she brought herself to her senses, she heard hushed chatter outside her tent and a set of rushed footsteps. Listening ever closer, she recognizes Carl and Sean whispering in a panicked, hushed tone. "What are you two doing?" she groggily asks. "Shh!" She is immediately hushed as the two approach the side of her tent. Sitting there, alone, as her two friends' chatter had now subsided, she can now hear what had caused her friends to exit their tents. There was a loud breathing and exhaling sound nearby, with the occasional soft patter on twigs. "What do we do?" Carl whispered, as the breathing began encircling their campsite. Amanda had never felt so exposed. She could not see what they could, if they saw anything at all. And it was obvious from her friend's reaction that they were too scared to make any unnecessary noise. The situation was tense. Something large had rushed off into the trees. With her adrenaline spiking, Amanda unzipped her tent and joined the two men now stood fully upright, staring into the woods. The last embers of the fire had died long ago, and only shadowy outcrops illuminated their surroundings. "Get your things," said Sean. "We are leaving in 15 seconds. The trio grabbed what they could and made a careful dash for the nearby trail. They sustained many cuts as they bumbled through, but it did not slow them. The moon now shone above, reflecting the ever-needed illumination down to the otherwise dark path. Relief began kicking in, and after a couple of minutes, they made it to the trail. Now that they could finally see their footfalls, the trio picked up their haste back toward town. But a little way down the trail, and pulling out her phone for its warm, comforting light, Amanda was interrupted by Sean, exclaiming, oh no. He didn't stop, but as she passed the location, she knew what had caught his attention. That was theirs, Sean said. The other group. On the floor lay a bag torn with red liquid splashed all over. Looking down at the path below, it became evidently apparent something horrible had happened here, and very recently. Not one of them stopped to investigate. Everything had now become so real. But with the pace they were making, they didn't have long until they reached the lights and apparent safety of the town below them. Breaking through the final barrier of trees was an unimaginable feeling. They had made it. A soul-shattering squeal emerged from the woods, barely 100 meters behind them. And as if not enough to cause dread to envelop the trio, another squeal rang out. A symphony of howls and growls now filled the sky as the lights from the previously sleepy households began to flicker on. Something was coming. Something numerous, something unnatural and thirsty for blood.